Welcome, guys, to another episode of Labyrinthia. This morning, we're going to be talking about one of the most mysterious materials of perfumery of all times. I think up until this point, there's very few things that we know for sure, but we know a couple of things. The material that I'm going to talk to you about today is ambergris. Ambergris actually originates from an animal source. We do believe, it is believed, scientists up to this point believe that about 1 to 10% of the sperm whale population on our planet, in our seas, in our ocean, at some point in their life, these whales develop an illness, a sickness. It is, to my knowledge, not known what causes that sickness, if it's contracted, if they just get it, if that's just a genetical thing, no one knows, really. The poor sperm whale, though, who gets that illness, has a serious problem. Sperm whales, of course, nourish themselves out of very small animals and very small floating around particles, algae in the sea. What they do, they basically slurp in a big chunk of water and they filter all kinds of things out, but the small little particles that are in the sea, they serve the whale as nutrition. So the whale takes up all these little animals and little nutrients. Occasionally, though, while he's slurping in all this water, there's a calmar. And we all know calmars have these rocks or these bones inside of them, these like about white, about this big. And the normal whale, the normal sperm whale, can actually just either digest it, I'm not really sure, or just, get it out of his system. One or the other way. But the whale population that has the sickness can't. So it stays inside of the whale. And as it's not being processed, as it's not being digested, the whale kind of like puts a protective layer around it by its own intestinal slime, I guess you would call it. Some matter, some male matter that surrounds the calmar. That actually is the first step of this whole process. The whale continues to eat, continues to slurp in water. There's more calmar eventually coming in. More calmar matter which can't be digested, more covering up, sliming up the whole thing, more trying to digest it still. So there's all kinds of fluids involved, all kinds of intestinal fluids involved. Of course, also there's little shrimp, and there's their ketine covers and their heads and their all kinds of things that kind of like float around in the ocean. The whale takes it up, can't digest it, and the lump inside of him gets bigger and bigger and bigger and starts growing, and it starts being sealed off by whale matter all the time. And as that process goes on, we have a whale, something growing inside of the whale. And in former times it was believed, a whale is quite big, so the thing inside of his body starts growing really big, and up until recently I think researchers thought that that at some point the whale kind of like vomits it out. And well, there was another theory that he doesn't vomit it out, but he kind of like gets rid of it the other way. And I believe the current status of research is that none of that happens. And very unfortunately, at some point in that disease, in that sickness, in that illness, that chunk of whale matter, undigested sea stuff, shells, calamars, shrimp, half digested, half diluted, covered in whale matter, just grows too big for the whale to handle. So none of the normal processes in its intestines can work in a normal way, and eventually, unfortunately, the whale dies of that sickness, of that chunk that's blocking his intestines. What happens next is the whale, as he's dead now, you know, he starts decomposing, and the whale, as it's rotting away, is basically vanishing. What's left is that chunk of material that has not been processed by the whale, or it has been processed, but it's not digested. It's half digested. It's full of whale slime. And that chunk of stuff is lighter than water. So it weighs less than water, it floats on the surface of the ocean. The whale is gone, it's decomposed, it's dead. And the chunk floats on the ocean for a day, 2 days, 3 days, weeks, months, years, being exposed to tropical sun, thunderstorms. It gets thrown around in the water. It's rained on. The sun shines on it for 30 days, consecutive days, drying it out, burning it, and the next wave turns it around again, and the next thunderstorm turns it around. It gets thrown against rocks and some shells, you know, and some beaches. It gets thrown back into the ocean, and it continues to swim. And guys, girls, imagine this chunk of whale stuff is floating around in, I'd say, in about, you can analyze them a little bit chemically, and they say after about 10 years of floating around in the ocean, some might be floating for 30, 50 years. Some might be floating a little less, but then they're not so good because they're quite stinky still. But the maceration process, there we have it again, the maceration process, rain, sun, salt water, washing it out, sun hitting it again, salt water, running around, turning around. After that process has been going on for 10 years, night, day, turning. That chunk of material gets so fragrant and so well smelling that now we call it ambergris. It's because it's from the whale. It's amber. I guess that's just what they called it before. And gris is because it's the French word gris for gray, because that matter actually looks like a gray chunk of something. So here's the thing. Eventually, every now and again, during a very big thunderstorm or other weather occurrences, this big chunk of ambergris gets thrown on some beach and stays there. Normally it gets retracted with the waves, because it's lighter and it floats. But occasionally, every now and again, just as any plastic bottle or any other swimming material, it gets washed up on the shore and stays there. And eventually somebody finds it. Why do they find it? Because it smells. It smells really intensely. And the odor is super hard to describe. It's something so absolutely wonderful, and at the same time it's fishy, it's marine. It's, of course, it smells like the sea. It has been floating around for 10 years. But it has an animal quality and a beauty to it that is nearly impossible to describe. It has a warmth, it has a depth, and it has an intensity that is incredible. It's 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 just an absolutely amazing material. The problem with it is you don't get it. Let me tell you this now, the weight of ambergris is worth more than gold. Saying that 1 ounce of ambergris is worth more money than 1 ounce of gold. And very, very, very seldomly it's found. It's very rare. That material is super rare. I mean, the sperm whales are getting pretty rare. The material has been floating around for 10 years. People have been collecting it. It keeps washing up on shores. People find it. But there's not so much material coming after that. And so when it's found, the people that find it are super wealthy. So you say you find like what, 3 kilos of ambergris, that's like more than 3 kilos of gold in worth, in money. It's like, it's amazing. There's a really great book that has been written about it, and that kind of tells the story of an investigative journalist who sets out to is drawn actually by a story, is alerted by a story where he reads in the newspaper some Indonesian fisherman found like a huge chunk of ambergris and got really rich selling it. So he follows that path, he tries to call him up, no one answers, he leaves messages, no one calls him back. So he goes on this journey and tries to find out about other people who have found ambergris. And there's quite a few people who have. So he looks them up and he tracks them down and he kind of tries to talk to anybody, and no one wants to talk to him. No one answers his call, no one calls him back, and he's like, what's happening to these people? Are they still alive? Yeah, they're still alive. But they don't talk about that matter anymore. So after years of searching, tracking, hunting down people, tracking them down, calling them up, trying to speak to them, eventually one guy wants to speak to him, speaks to him, says, you know, listen, what happens once the first time you find ambergris, you tell people about it. Then you go out and find ambergris and never tell anybody about it again. Because you do find ambergris. Once you know how it looks like, once you get the hold of where to look and when to look, and after a big thunderstorm, it's very probable to find something. If you're in the right spot, then you're lucky. And I mean, it's worth hundreds, thousands of dollars. It's, if not millions and millions. So you can imagine there's people interested in that stuff. There's people actually out there hunting it down, and there's even people who do not so friendly things to people who find ambergris. So that's why if you find it, you want to keep your mouth shut. There has been stories of findings of ambergris, and the next day there's been like, you know, 5, 6 diplomatic flights from all over the world coming and leaving with suitcases that are not searched at customs. Because also what happens is, of course, ambergris is a protected material. Sperm whale is protected. You're not allowed to sell it. You're not allowed to buy it. You're not allowed to possess it. So basically, you know, it's illegal to bring it over some border unless you're a diplomat with a diplomatic suitcase which is not being searched. And there have been stories about that, like the most mysterious stories throughout recent history. Yeah. I'm pretty sure people are still buying it. I'm pretty sure also companies are still macerating it and putting it in their perfumes. What it does to your perfume, it fixates it beyond belief. It gives it a depth and a warmth and amber quality, a natural smelling amber quality that is astounding. I did experiments with it myself. It's hard to describe the effect that ambergris has on the fragrance. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, it's just first, it's not obtainable on a regular basis, and second of all, it's more expensive than you could ever imagine. So I'm not in position to offer you anything with ambergris, with natural ambergris. Maybe one day we will find a big chunk. I will not tell you about it, but you will know when there is an ambergris fragrance. That I will let you know. For the moment, I can just say, I mean, you know, like in perfumery, there have been countless experiments and countless analysis and countless chemical ways of trying to emulate the smell of ambergris. And fortunately, I have to say, fortunately, scientists have been very successful in getting a hold of emulating the scent of ambergris. It is really something that in perfumery can be done. There's a molecule called ambradolide, which is amazing, astounding. It's one of my favorite materials of all times. It's wow. And it has been found in natural ambergris. They believe it is actually the reason why ambergris smells like it smells. But as always, the natural stuff, the natural substance, the natural material itself does have an astounding overall quality. It is composed not only of ambradolide, it is composed of myriads and myriads of organic processes where decomposition of organic matter and influences beyond our control, pure luck and chance and weather and rain and sun and storm and sea salt water have been macerating a substance to a point where the sheer beauty of this material is incredible. It is just something, if you get a hold of it if you ever manage to just maybe visit someone who has a piece of ambergris, it is truly, truly, truly something you should be smelling. It has been used, actually, it had really been used in former times in perfumery quite a lot, as there was no natural, there was no synthetic ambradolide. People were, of course, using the real stuff. It was put in a lot of scents. From a money perspective, I think it's not doable. So yeah, here's a little bit. You know now, ambergris is actually sperm digestive matter, sperm whale matter, undigested sperm whale matter that has been floating around in the oceans for about 10 years and has been macerating in salt water and with sunlight and with rain and tropical thunderstorms for a very, very long time. And that just gives us a material that is incredible. But we need to emulate it these days. We are able to do that. There's a lot of also compounds developed by famous fragrance houses. They basically add on not only ambradolide, but they add on a couple of other raw materials, and they, of course, that's their big secret of how they do it. But they're successful. It smells like ambergris. It does. It doesn't smell like the real thing. But comparing, you know, as you can work with it. There's other things in your perfume as well, so you might not even be noticing whether you put real ambergris or not. But the real stuff is something to look out, and if you, in case you're curious and interested, I mean, go hunting for it, and if you find some, let me know. Let me know, I'll buy it off you, I'll buy it off. I'm interested in that stuff as well, really interested, just because it is just something that of course, as a perfumer, it's better than gold. You can do, actually, you can do something with it, and you can have it sit around and smell it every now and again, and just fills your heart with joy. So there we go. That's the story of ambergris, a really mysterious fragrant material coming from the seas and providing us with great joy. Girls, boys, I hope you learned something today, and I see you next time.